Welcome to True Crime, the Untold Stories. Today, we unravel a twisted, untold tale of love, betrayal, and murder in the heart of Lexington, Kentucky. What initially appeared to be a tragic suicide soon revealed a far more sinister truth: a deadly love triangle with fatal consequences. Drew Miller was 45 years old when he was murdered in October 2019. He was a real estate developer in Lexington, Kentucky. He was well known for his business skills and his ability to make deals happen. His friends liked his confidence, and his clients appreciated how he could close deals with his charm and smooth talking. But Drew's personal life was very different from his professional life. He was married to Vicky Miller, and they had 2 children together. However, Drew was known to cheat on his wife. His affairs were an open secret in Lexington, yet Drew always managed to keep his family life separate from his business life. Despite his infidelity, Drew was still close to his family. He made sure they lived a good life in one of Lexington's upscale neighborhoods. Drew had hobbies too. He loved sailing and owned a boat called One Hot Dude that he often took out on Lake Cumberland. Spending time on his boat was a way for him to escape the stress and chaos of his life. On weekends, he would sometimes take his friends or family out on the water, enjoying the peace and quiet away from the busy city. In the days leading up to his death, Drew seemed distracted and preoccupied. He was spending more time than usual on his boat, and some of his friends noticed that something was bothering him. He was also busy planning his next big real estate project, which he hoped would be one of his biggest successes yet. Drew was determined to keep his professional reputation strong, despite the issues in his personal life. But behind the scenes, the problems in his marriage and his many affairs were starting to catch up with him, leading to the events that would eventually take his life. On October 12, 2019, at around 8:00 a.m., Drew Miller's body was found in his home in Lexington, Kentucky. The discovery was made by his wife, Vicky Miller, who had returned home after spending the night at a friend's house. Vicky walked into the living room and found Drew lying on the floor, motionless. At first, she thought he had passed out, but as she got closer, she realized something was terribly wrong. Drew wasn't breathing, and there was blood on the floor around him. Panicking, Vicky immediately called 911. She was frozen in shock, unable to process what she was seeing. Within minutes, paramedics and police arrived at the scene. The first responders found Vicky sitting on the front porch, crying and trembling. She told them she had no idea what had happened and that everything had seemed fine when she left the house the night before. The paramedics quickly checked Drew's vital signs but confirmed that he was already dead. Drew's body was found in the living room near the entrance to the kitchen. He had severe head injuries, and there was a tire iron lying nearby, covered in blood. The scene was gruesome, with blood splatters on the walls and floor. However, there was something unusual. The scene seemed staged. A suicide note was found next to Drew's body, but it looked suspiciously out of place. The handwriting was shaky, and the contents of the note didn't seem to match the situation. The police immediately had doubts about the note's authenticity. As the police began their investigation, Vicky was taken to the station for further questioning. She was still in shock, unable to give clear answers to the officers' questions. The discovery of Drew's body marked the beginning of a complex investigation that would soon reveal dark secrets about his life and the people around him. The police arrived at Drew Miller's home in Lexington, Kentucky, within minutes of Vicky Miller's 911 call on October 12, 2019. Leading the investigation was Detective Jackie Collins, a seasoned investigator known for her sharp instincts and no-nonsense approach. She was accompanied by Officer Mark Dagus, a younger officer eager to prove himself. As they entered the home, they were immediately struck by the chaos in the living room. Blood was splattered across the floor and walls, and the tire iron, the likely murder weapon, lay near Drew's lifeless body. Detective Collins carefully examined the scene. Drew's injuries were severe, with multiple blows to the head, suggesting a violent and personal attack. The scene was disturbing, but something felt off. The supposed suicide note found near Drew's body didn't sit right with Collins. The handwriting was shaky and uneven, and the content of the note seemed too vague and impersonal. It lacked the kind of detail and emotion one might expect from someone about to end their own life. Collins immediately suspected that the note had been staged to cover up a murder. The police began processing the crime scene methodically. They photographed the entire area, took samples of the blood for analysis, and dusted for fingerprints. Forensic experts were called in to examine the tire iron and the note more closely. Detective Collins instructed her team to search the rest of the house for any other signs of a struggle or additional evidence. They found nothing out of the ordinary, which only deepened Collins' suspicion that this was not a random act of violence, but rather a planned and deliberate murder. As the investigation continued, the police interviewed neighbors and checked security cameras in the area for any suspicious activity. They also looked into Drew's recent activities, trying to piece together his last hours alive. Collins knew that to solve this case, they would need to dig deep into Drew's personal life and relationships. The bloody crime scene and the staged note were just the beginning. The truth would likely be found in the secrets Drew had kept hidden from even those closest to him. The first suspect the police investigated was Vicky Miller, Drew's 42-year-old wife. Vicky was known in Lexington as the perfect Southern lady, always elegant, always put together. She spent her time organizing charity events, often featured in local news for her contributions. But beneath her composed exterior, Vicky was struggling. She had known about Drew's affairs for years and had been dealing with the emotional toll of his infidelity. During her initial questioning, Vicky appeared shaken but cooperative. She told Detective Jackie Collins that she had spent the night at a friend's house and found Drew's body when she returned home the next morning. Vicky claimed she had no idea who could have done such a thing, insisting that Drew had no enemies. But as the questioning continued, Vicky's story began to show some inconsistencies. Vicky's motive became clearer as the police dug deeper into her personal life. She had been humiliated by Drew's repeated affairs, and her carefully crafted public image was at risk. The affair that hurt her the most was Drew's relationship with LaConte, one of her closest friends. The betrayal by both her husband and her friend was too much for Vicky to bear. She felt trapped, unable to leave Drew without losing her social status and financial security. When Detective Collins asked Vicky about her relationship with Drew, Vicky tried to maintain her composure but occasionally faltered. Her answers were short, and she seemed uncomfortable discussing the details of their marriage. The police also noticed that Vicky's demeanor shifted when they mentioned LaConte. Vicky's eyes narrowed and her tone became colder. It was clear that the mention of Laura struck a nerve. Despite the pressure, Vicky never broke down during the interrogation. She remained calm and controlled, even as the police hinted that they suspected her involvement in Drew's death. However, the police knew that Vicky was hiding something. They continued to press her for details, hoping to catch her in a lie or uncover a piece of evidence that would tie her to the murder. For now, Vicky maintained her innocence, but the police were far from convinced. The second suspect in the investigation was LaConte, a 37-year-old interior designer with a reputation for creativity and precision. Laura had been friends with Vicky Miller for years and had worked closely with Drew on several of his real estate projects. Her keen eye for detail made her a sought-after designer in Lexington, where she often collaborated with high-end clients on luxury homes. But behind her professional success, Laura harbored a secret. She had been having an affair with Drew Miller. Laura and Drew's affair had been going on for some time, beginning in the most unlikely of places, a local Burger King bathroom, where they first had sex. What started as a brief moment of passion soon turned into a complicated relationship. Laura was drawn to Drew's charisma and success, but she also valued her friendship with Vicky, creating a deep internal conflict. Despite this, she continued the affair, torn between her feelings for Drew and her loyalty to Vicky. When the police brought Laura in for questioning, she appeared nervous but composed. Detective Jackie Collins asked her about her relationship with Drew, and Laura reluctantly admitted to the affair. She expressed regret, stating that she had been caught up in the excitement and hadn't thought about the consequences. Laura was visibly uncomfortable as the questioning continued, especially when Detective Collins asked about her feelings toward Vicky. Laura insisted that she never wanted to hurt her friend and that she had planned to end the affair. The police considered Laura a suspect because of her close relationship with both Drew and Vicky. Her affair with Drew gave her a possible motive: jealousy or a desire to remove Vicky from the picture. However, Laura was quick to deny any involvement in Drew's murder. She claimed she was at home the night of the crime, working on a design project. The police checked her alibi, which was confirmed by a neighbor who saw her working late into the night. Despite Laura's alibi, the police weren't entirely convinced of her innocence. Her affair with Drew and her friendship with Vicky placed her at the center of a complex web of relationships. Detective Collins sensed that Laura knew more than she was letting on, but without concrete evidence, the police had to continue their investigation, keeping a close eye on Laura as they searched for the truth. The third suspect the police turned their attention to was Matt Hayes, a 23-year-old personal trainer in Lexington. Matt was well known among the city's elite, often working with wealthy clients at high-end gyms like Orange Theory Fitness. With his good looks and athletic build, Matt was popular with his clients, especially the women. He had earned a reputation as a bit of a playboy, frequently seen with different women around town. One of those women was Vicky Miller. Matt and Vicky's affair had been going on for several months. Matt was drawn to Vicky's sophistication and the excitement of being involved with a married woman. However, it wasn't just the thrill of the affair that kept Matt interested. He was ambitious and saw his relationship with Vicky as a way to move up in social circles. But the police believed there might be more to Matt's involvement in Drew's murder than just an affair. When Detective Jackie Collins questioned Matt, he was confident and relaxed, almost too much so. He admitted to the affair with Vicky but denied any involvement in Drew's death. Matt claimed he had been with a client the night Drew was killed, providing an alibi that the police later confirmed. However, there were still suspicions about Matt's true intentions. His relationship with Vicky gave him a possible motive. Perhaps he saw Drew as an obstacle to his future with Vicky, or wanted to protect her from Drew's wrath if he discovered the affair. Matt's responses during the interrogation were smooth, almost rehearsed. He seemed eager to cooperate, but there was an underlying sense that he was holding something back. Detective Collins noticed that Matt became more guarded when she asked about his financial situation. Matt was deeply in debt, a fact he tried to downplay during the interview. The police began to wonder if Matt's financial troubles could have pushed him to play a larger role in Drew's death than he was admitting. Although Matt's alibi held up, Detective Collins couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Matt's charm and confidence might have helped him win over clients, but they also made him a prime suspect in the eyes of the police. The investigation into his connection with Vicky and his possible motives continued as the police looked for any cracks in his story.
Hey, interested in more real-life murder mysteries? Be sure to like our content and subscribe to our channel for more true crime stories. Do you have any thoughts about this case or have a case of your own you'd like us to investigate? Leave us a comment. Until then, stay safe.
On October 18, 2019, a week after Drew Miller's murder, a break in the case came from an unexpected source. It was a chilly morning in Lexington, with the first hints of winter in the air. Detective Jackie Collins received a call from LaConte, who claimed she had new information. Collins, intrigued but cautious, met Laura at a quiet coffee shop in downtown Lexington, where the streets were filled with people heading to work, and the scent of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. Laura was visibly nervous, glancing around as if worried someone might be watching. She handed Detective Collins a small USB drive, her hands trembling slightly. Laura explained that she had been feeling guilty about keeping a secret and decided to come forward. The USB drive contained recordings of conversations between Laura and Matt Hayes. Laura had secretly recorded them after becoming suspicious of Matt's true intentions. The recordings revealed a shocking twist in the case. In the conversations, Matt was heard subtly manipulating Vicky Miller, playing on her fears and insecurities. He had known about Vicky's plan to kill Drew and had encouraged her, even suggesting ways to stage the scene. His tone was calm and calculated, making it clear that he was not just an innocent bystander. Matt had his own motives. He was deep in debt and saw Drew's death as a way to secure his financial future by blackmailing Vicky afterward. Detective Collins listened to the recordings carefully, piecing together Matt's manipulation and Vicky's growing desperation. The evidence was compelling and pointed to a deeper conspiracy between Matt and Vicky. Collins realized that Matt had been pushing Vicky toward murder, planning to exploit her vulnerability for his gain. The police acted quickly on this new evidence. They obtained a warrant to search Matt's apartment, where they found further proof of his involvement, a handwritten note detailing his plan to blackmail Vicky after Drew's death. This discovery, combined with the recordings, provided the police with the evidence they needed to arrest Matt and bring him in for further questioning. The new evidence changed the direction of the investigation, shifting focus from Vicky as the primary suspect to a more complex plot involving both her and Matt. It also brought Laura's role into question, though her cooperation with the police suggested she was more of a reluctant participant than a willing accomplice. On October 20, 2019, the police made their move. With the new evidence from Laura LaConte in hand, they were ready to arrest both Vicky Miller and Matt Hayes for their roles in Drew Miller's murder. It was a crisp Sunday morning in Lexington, and the city was quiet, with most people still enjoying their weekend. Detective Jackie Collins led the operation, knowing that this would be the final step in unraveling the twisted plot. The police first went to Vicky's home, a spacious, well-manicured property in one of Lexington's upscale neighborhoods. Vicky, 42, was in the middle of preparing for a charity event, dressed in her usual elegant attire. When the police knocked on her door, she answered calmly, unaware of what was about to happen. Detective Collins stepped forward, reading Vicky her rights as she was placed under arrest for the murder of her husband, Drew Miller. The shock on Vicky's face was unmistakable. She had thought she had covered her tracks, but the weight of the evidence against her was undeniable. Vicky didn't resist. She simply nodded and allowed herself to be taken into custody. Next, the police headed to Matt Hayes' apartment, a more modest building on the other side of town. Matt, 23, was just getting ready to head out to the gym, dressed in athletic gear. When the police arrived, he initially tried to talk his way out of the situation, using his usual charm. But as Detective Collins presented the evidence against him, the recordings, the note, and his manipulation of Vicky, Matt's confidence faltered. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Matt finally gave in, his bravado replaced by a look of resignation. He was handcuffed and led out of his apartment, a stark contrast to the confident, carefree image he had always portrayed. The arrests brought a sense of relief to Drew Miller's family and friends, who had been anxiously waiting for justice. Vicky's parents, who had always admired their daughter's composure, were devastated by the news, struggling to reconcile the image of the daughter they knew with the woman now accused of murder. Drew's close friends, who had once looked up to him for his business acumen, were left to grapple with the tragic end of a man whose personal life had spiraled out of control. The trial of Vicky Miller and Matt Hayes began in late October 2019, capturing the attention of Lexington and beyond. The prosecution was led by Assistant Commonwealth's Attorney Linda Thompson, a seasoned lawyer known for her sharp mind and tenacity in the courtroom. At 48, Thompson had built a reputation for her no-nonsense approach and her ability to connect with juries through clear, compelling arguments. Thompson laid out the case against Vicky and Matt in meticulous detail. She described how Vicky, driven by years of emotional turmoil from Drew's infidelities and the fear of losing her status, had plotted to kill her husband. Thompson also highlighted Matt's role, showing how he had manipulated Vicky into carrying out the murder, all while planning to blackmail her afterward. The recordings provided by Laura LaConte were played in court, painting a chilling picture of Matt's cold calculation and Vicky's growing desperation. Thompson argued that both were equally responsible for Drew's death, and she pushed for the maximum sentence. On the defense side, Vicky's lawyer, Laughlin Daniels, 55, tried to portray her as a victim of emotional abuse, manipulated by Matt into committing the crime. Daniels, known for his calm demeanor and persuasive speaking style, emphasized Vicky's years of suffering under Drew's philandering and argued that she had been pushed to the brink by Matt's influence. He sought to reduce her sentence by painting her as a broken woman who had acted out of desperation, not malice. Matt's attorney, Rachel Green, 38, took a different approach. She tried to distance her client from the murder, arguing that while Matt's actions were morally questionable, he hadn't directly participated in the killing. Green, a rising star in the legal world, attempted to shift the blame entirely onto Vicky, claiming that Matt was simply an opportunist who had gotten caught up in a situation beyond his control. The trial was an emotional roller coaster for Drew Miller's family. His parents sat in the front row every day, their faces etched with grief as they listened to the details of their son's death. Friends and former colleagues of Drew's filled the courtroom, their support for the prosecution clear. After weeks of testimony and deliberation, the jury found both Vicky Miller and Matt Hayes guilty of first-degree murder. Vicky was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, while Matt received 25 years for his role in the crime. The verdict brought a measure of justice, but for those who knew Drew, the scars of the tragedy would remain. After the trial, the lives of everyone involved were forever changed. The aftermath of Drew Miller's murder left a lasting impact on his family, friends, and the city of Lexington. Vicky Miller, sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, began serving her time at the Kentucky Correctional Institute for Women. Her life behind bars was a stark contrast to the luxurious lifestyle she had enjoyed before. Vicky's friends and supporters were few, as most distanced themselves after her conviction. The charity events and high society gatherings she once organized were now distant memories, replaced by the daily routines of prison life. Matt Hayes was sentenced to 25 years in prison. He was transferred to the Bell County Forestry Camp, a facility known for housing inmates with non-violent offenses. Matt's charm and athletic build made him stand out even in prison, but his life was far from easy. He faced a challenging adjustment to his new environment, with his reputation as a personal trainer offering little comfort behind bars. Matt's former clients, once enthusiastic about his training sessions, now saw him in a different light. LaConte, who had cooperated with the police and provided crucial evidence, faced her own set of challenges. Though she was not charged with any crime, her involvement in the case brought her unwanted attention. She moved to a new city, trying to leave behind the media frenzy and the fallout from her role in the investigation. Laura continued her work as an interior designer but kept a low profile, focusing on rebuilding her life away from the public eye. The case of Drew Miller's murder left a mark on Lexington. It was a reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the dark paths some can take when driven by jealousy and desperation.